we invested a lot of time and effort in developing what I think is the best currently available set of information matching facilities to their corporate parents. And we use that information to produce something called the Toxic 100, which up till now has always been about air pollution only. We started out looking at air pollution. So we have a ranking of the top corporate air polluters in the United States, which is simply the scores emerging from the EPA's RSEI data project, aggregated up across facilities to get corporate scores. That's been something that's been of interest to the socially responsible investment community, to researchers, to communities, to shareholder activists, and to corporations themselves, who often, it turns out, didn't have this information. The toxic release information would be submitted by plant managers or plant facility people or consultants hired by the facility, and it's not always the case that headquarters even had that information. I had a conversation with the chief environmental officer of one of the top 100 companies. These are all, by the way, the Toxic 100 was all based on Fortune 500 or Forbes S&P 500 companies. And this woman called me up and wanted me to explain how we got the numbers, so I sort of walked her through and explained it. And at the end of the conversation, she said, well, I'm going to introduce a new policy based on what you've told me. And I said, oh yeah, what's that? And she said, well, from now on, when our facility people send the TRI report, the annual report to the EPA, I'm going to have them fax a copy to us here at headquarters. I thought, wow. So here she is, the chief environmental officer for a major corporation. She didn't even have copies of the data that was going to EPA that was the basis of how they appeared in our Toxic 100 ranking. Partly what this has done is it's raised the visibility, I would say, of these data. And it's really consistent with the principles that led to the creation of the Toxics Release Inventory to begin with, which was that we have a right to know. In fact, it was called right to know legislation. It's in the name of the legislation. And the Toxics Release Inventory is really the crown jewel of the achievements of the environmental right to know movement in the United States. And it's great that that information's reported, it's great that it's accessible, but in order to really make it useful to the public, it's important to try to find ways to use that data to present information that people can actually get a hold of and grasp, and corporate rankings are one way to do it. The second piece that we've added to the data obtained from the EPA is the following. As I mentioned, when EPA constructs the RSEI indicators, it takes demographic data from the U.S. Census, and all that they used was population densities in the various locations impacted by the air pollution and water pollution. The number of people, that's what they were interested in. But of course, the census not only includes data on numbers of people, it also includes data on the composition of the population, including data on race, ethnicity, and income. So what we realized was that by going back into the raw data that the EPA uses in order to construct its facility-by-facility measures of human health hazards, we could also look at the extent to which the hazards resulting from toxic emissions from any given facility disproportionately impact certain population groups. What percentage of that hazard is a hazard impacting African Americans? What percentage impacting families living below the official poverty line, etc. Right? So it took us a long time to do this. The technical complications of getting the data and analyzing the data were pretty formidable, but we ultimately have done it. And so we now are able to look at not only the human health hazards coming out from different facilities and the corporate responsibility for those impacts, but also at the distribution of those hazards across income groups and across racial and ethnic groups in the United States. So on that basis, we constructed what I think, as far as I know, are the first rankings of corporate performance in terms of environmental justice. Rankings in terms of the extent to which the industrial facilities that they own, these include manufacturing, mining, and utilities, electric utilities in the United States, all of which report to TRI, the extent to which those facilities impose disparate burdens on low-income communities and people of color. And on the basis of those data, we produced this report called Justice in the Air, which came out this spring and is a co-publication of our institute here at UMass, the Political Economy Research Institute, and a sister institute at the University of Southern California.